Okay.
Yes, for another brief remarks, let me invite our next colleagues here. You can see here Jimmy and Bill from Goucher College. They have also wonderful. Let's go for the brief remarks, and after the brief remarks, of all the presenter, we'll have a group discussion. Okay, Jimmy and Bill.
Wonderful. Thanks for having us. So Jamie and I are at Goucher College in Baltimore, Maryland, which was the first college in the United States to require a study abroad component for 100% of our undergraduates. And so as a result, we knew that our student body was going to be significantly impacted by COVID-19. Not only the portion of our student body that was out of the country when the pandemic struck and had to make that choice when and how to return home, but also those that were in the process of planning or had already planned future study abroad in the coming months of the pandemic. And in additionally, all students, right, who had this dimension of global education as a cornerstone of their undergraduate experience. And so we're really interested in seeing what this type of disruption of this sort of fundamental cornerstone activity of an undergraduate education, how students made sense and processed that. And so we ran a series of a survey and focus groups of those students impacted during the summer of 2020, and basically thought about three groups of students. The students that were currently abroad and out of the country at this onset of the pandemic that had to make that decision about when and how to come home. Students who were forced to cancel plans either in the summer or fall of 2020. And students that had not yet made plans, but were about to make plans, knowing that this was a requirement of graduation for them. So we identified 574 likely students that were impacted on our campus and had 193 of them complete our survey. It's about a little over 13% of our entire undergraduate population, just for an idea of scale. And then in addition to that, we had 10 students do in-depth focus groups with us about their experiences and their processing of that. So one important piece of context for this before I turn it over to my colleague to talk about some of our findings is that when we were actually talking to these students, we were, as tough as it is to believe, at a particularly kind of optimistic time in the pandemic. We spoke with them in sort of late June, mid-July 2020. And that's actually, if you can remember back that far, right at a kind of a lull. And many of our students, as we spoke with them, had a reasonable expectation that they will be back on campus that coming fall and spring, and that study abroad may have very well been possible in the 2020-2021 academic year, when in reality, at least our students spent the entire academic year online. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague to talk about some of our findings.
Okay, so just to highlight two key findings quickly, looking at the impact of COVID on students' attitudes towards the study abroad requirement at Goucher, and also on their desire to participate in other international activities. So in terms of the impact on attitudes towards our requirement, students who were merely observers, meaning that they weren't abroad during spring 2020 or did not have plans that needed to be modified, experienced the least change in their opinion. Regardless of the type of impact experienced, though, similar proportions of respondents became more in favor of the requirement. And then finally, for that piece, respondents who were impacted directly became somewhat less in favor or a great deal less in favor of our institutional requirement. And then in terms of the impact on the desire to participate in other international activities such as travel, work, or schooling, the majority of students reported that COVID-19 had no impact. Across all categories of future international activities, sophomores experienced the largest declines in their desires to participate, while seniors experienced the largest increases. And we think this impact could be a result of seniors being the group most likely to have been abroad during spring 2020 and called back early. As such, they've had an increased exposure to concrete international experiences they could draw on. And alternatively, for many sophomores, these international experiences were still hypothetical. So we're happy to talk in more depth during the discussion. Thank you.